The doctors told me I had just 3 days left to live, and as I lay there barely able to breathe, my daughter-in-law stood beside my bed, leaned close, and squeezed my hand so tightly it hurt. Then she whispered something in my ear that made my blood run cold. In that moment, I realized death wasn't what I was afraid of anymore. It was her. So tell me honestly, if you thought your own family was waiting for you to die, so they could take everything you worked for, what would you do? I never imagined my life would end like that. In a hospital room that smelled of disinfectant and quiet despair, staring at a ceiling I had memorized from hours of sleepless nights. My name is Robert. I'm 68 years old, or at least I was at the time all of this happened, and until a few months before that moment, I thought I had lived a good, honest life. I worked hard for over 40 years, first as an electrician's apprentice, then running my own small business. I wasn't rich, but I owned my home outright, had a decent amount saved, and most importantly, I believed I had a family that loved me. I had one son, Daniel, who was my pride from the moment I first held him. When his mother passed away years ago, it was just the two of us, and I poured everything I had into raising him right. I taught him to be respectful, to work hard, to value honesty. I truly believed I had succeeded. Then Daniel met Melissa. At first, I told myself I was just being an overprotective father. Melissa was charming, I'll give her that. She smiled a lot, laughed loudly, and always seemed to know exactly what to say. But something about her never sat right with me. It wasn't anything obvious. It was the way her eyes seemed to calculate everything, the way she listened more than she spoke, filing things away. Still, Daniel was in love, and I wasn't about to be the bitter old man who couldn't accept his son's happiness. They got married within a year, and I even helped pay for part of the wedding. I remember Melissa hugging me afterward and saying, "You're like a father to me now." I wanted to believe her. After they got married, things slowly started to change. Daniel visited less. When he did come over, Melissa was always there, answering questions for him, steering conversations. If I mentioned finances, Melissa would perk up. If I talked about the house, she'd ask pointed questions. "This place must be worth a lot now, right?" she once said casually, like she was asking about the weather. I brushed it off. I told myself I was paranoid. Then my health started failing. It began with fatigue, the kind that sleep doesn't fix. Then came the pain in my chest, the shortness of breath, the nights where I'd wake up gasping like I'd been underwater. After a series of tests, the doctors sat me down and said words no one ever wants to hear. Advanced heart failure. Complications, limited options. They couldn't give me an exact timeline, but it wasn't good. Suddenly, Daniel and Melissa were around all the time. Too much, almost. They insisted I shouldn't be alone. They said it was for my safety. They brought groceries, helped around the house, and at first, I was grateful. Then Melissa suggested I let them handle my finances to reduce stress. She said stress was bad for my heart. Daniel nodded along, not meeting my eyes. I refused, politely at first, then firmly. That's when the tone shifted. Melissa stopped smiling as much. Her kindness felt forced. I'd catch her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking, her expression flat and impatient. Daniel became quieter, more distant, like he was stuck between two worlds and didn't know how to choose. Eventually, after a particularly bad episode, I collapsed and woke up in the hospital. That's when the doctors told me I had maybe days, a week if I was lucky. That's when Melissa squeezed my hand. She leaned in so close I could smell her perfume and whispered, "Don't worry, Robert. We'll take good care of everything once you're gone. Not we'll take care of you, not rest easy, everything. In those 3 days, lying there unable to move much, I had a lot of time to think. I replayed every conversation, every odd comment. Every moment my instincts told me something was wrong, and I ignored it. Nurses came and went. Daniel visited, sat quietly, sometimes cried. Melissa rarely left my side. She spoke to doctors for me, answered questions before I could, signed forms I was too tired to read. I felt like a ghost watching my own life being packed up. On the second day, I overheard her on the phone in the hallway. She didn't know I was awake. She said, "Yes, the house will be ours. He hasn't changed the will. It's just a matter of time now." She laughed softly. I stared at the wall and felt a rage I didn't know my weak body could still produce. I did have a will. I had written it years ago, leaving everything to Daniel, trusting he would do the right thing. But lying there, listening to Melissa plan my death like a business transaction, I realized something painful. Even if Daniel wasn't actively part of it, he was allowing it. His silence was consent. That night, when Melissa left, I asked the nurse for help. I told her I needed a lawyer. She looked hesitant, reminded me of my condition, but something in my eyes must have convinced her. The next morning, a hospital appointed legal advisor came in. My hands shook as I spoke, my voice barely above a whisper, but my mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. I told him everything. I changed my will. I didn't leave everything to charity. I didn't cut Daniel out completely. I left him a small, symbolic amount, enough that he couldn't contest it easily. The rest, my house, my savings, everything Melissa clearly wanted, I left to a foundation that helped widowers and single parents. People like I had once been. I felt a strange peace signing those papers, like I had taken back a piece of myself. Here's where I want to pause for a second, because this is the moment where everything could have gone differently. So that was the situation I was in, weak, dying, betrayed by the people I trusted most. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to stop and really think about it. If you were lying in that bed, knowing your own family was waiting to profit from your death, would you have done what I did, or would you have tried to keep the peace until the end? Melissa found out the next day. I'll never forget her face. The nurse had just left, and Melissa walked in holding a coffee, cheerful as ever, until she noticed the legal papers on the side table. She picked them up without asking, scanned them, and her smile vanished. Her eyes snapped to me, sharp and furious. "What is this?" she demanded. I didn't have the strength to argue. I just said, "My decision." She laughed, but it was hollow. "You're not in your right mind," she said. "Daniel will fix this." Daniel came in later, and she told him everything. They argued right there in front of me, like I wasn't even a person anymore. Melissa accused him of being weak. Daniel looked torn, his eyes darting between me and her. Finally, he turned to me and asked, "Why would you do this to us?" That question hurt more than any physical pain I was in. I looked at my son and said, "You did this to yourself when you let her treat me like I was already dead." He didn't answer. That night, my condition worsened. Alarms beeped, doctors rushed in, and everything blurred. I remember thinking, so this is it. But then I woke up. Against all odds, my heart stabilized. 3 days passed, then 4. The doctors were shocked. They called it a miracle. I called it stubbornness. Recovery was slow, painful, and lonely. Daniel visited once after that argument. He apologized, but it felt rehearsed. Melissa never came back. When I was finally discharged weeks later, I went home alone. The house was quiet, but it was mine, truly mine. A month later, I got a letter from Daniel. He said Melissa had left him. She blamed him for losing their future. Reading those words, I felt a complicated mix of sadness and validation. I didn't respond, not out of spite, but because I needed distance to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. It's been a year since then. I'm not fully healthy, but I'm alive. I volunteer now, helping people who feel forgotten. I rewrote my story when I thought it was over, and that's something I'll always carry with me. So here's my final thought. Blood doesn't always mean loyalty, and kindness doesn't always come with good intentions. Sometimes, standing up for yourself at the end is the most powerful thing you can do. If you were on my side, like this video. If you want to hear more real, raw stories like this, subscribe to the channel. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I read every single one. I'll see you all in the next story.